Is Mulan a box office success? Did it make any money? Well, that's the real question, isn't it? Now, if you remember a few days ago, I made a video talking about how Mulan could potentially be the most profitable movie Disney has ever made. And I'll link to that in the description of this video in case you want, for some reason, want to watch more of me. But basically, I did that video based off of the data I was getting from Yahoo Finance, this article in particular, as well as a firm called 7Park Data, who is a analytics firm that basically it monitors various different streaming services like Disney Plus, and it kind of gets viewership numbers on like how many people are watching like what show and stuff like that. And so basically 7Park Data came out and said that nearly 29% of US Disney Plus users accessed the app between September 1st to September 12th and purchased the $30 Mulan film. And so Yahoo Finance kind of took that figure and ran with it and extrapolated a number that was in the $260 million range. And I was like, wow, if that's true, this is a game changer. This is something where the theatrical market's going to be dead, and all the studios are going to go to direct to paid video on demand streaming. It's basically pay-per-view through their own streaming services. So like they'll have a window where they release a brand new AAA movie for something like $30, as was in this case. And then they will, eventually make it go free on their service. But in order to watch it, right away, people have to pay money to see it. And it was a very interesting kind of risk that Disney took on this, because they have like 65 million users on Disney Plus worldwide. That number is obviously smaller for their US subscriber base, but regardless, if these numbers were true, that $260 million figure that Yahoo Finance quoted was going to be a big game changer, because Disney keeps 100% of the profit. They don't have to split it with another service like Netflix or Amazon. They don't have to split it with theater exhibitors. All that money goes right to Disney's pocket, and that could mean that the common mentality is that a movie needs to make twice its budget back in order to break even or turn a profit. And that takes into account all the marketing expenses and all the cuts with the exhibitors and stuff like that. But by controlling their own streaming platform, Disney gets to keep 100% of that money. So that old rule of thumb of a movie having to make twice its money back in order to be profitable wouldn't necessarily apply to a release like this. And I got to give it to Disney. It took some guts to take a $200 million plus movie and release it direct to video, bypassing the theaters. I mean, that was a big gamble. And according to Yahoo Finance, that paid off, but that might not actually be the case. Before I get to this, I just want to remind you guys that me and my friends at the Salty Nerd Podcast, we're doing this stuff because we love it, but we could really use your support. So if you want to just take a few minutes, go to saltynerdpodcast.com. If you're on an iPhone, that'll take you to the iTunes Apple Podcast page. If you're on an Android, it'll take you to either Spotify or Google Podcasts. And just take a minute to subscribe to us. It's free, and you get a lot of great content of our podcast where we talk about movies, TV shows, and all types of stuff. We're mostly a comedy podcast, so if you like to laugh, if you enjoy listening to funny takes on movies and TV shows, and if you have like long commutes where you're driving a lot, or you're just looking for something to listen to pass the time, it's a great show to check out. So I'd really encourage you to go to saltynerdpodcast.com and do that. It really helps us out, and it's a lot of fun. So we appreciate it, guys. Love you a lot, and it's a great way to support us and everything we're doing. Okay, back to Mulan. So remember how I said that 7Park Data is the company that came out with these numbers that Yahoo Finance kind of ran with? Well, Brian Lichtenberger, I'm sorry, I just don't know how to pronounce your name, Brian. He's one of the bigwigs over at 7Park Data, and he came out with some tweets just to clarify some stuff, which was really interesting. So he said, I wanted to briefly comment on our Mulan viewership data and Yahoo's revenue estimate. The data shared with Yahoo represents the share of the Disney Plus audience that streamed Mulan during the first 12 days of September. The size of the audience during the first 12 days of September does not equate to the entire size of the Disney Plus US subscriber base. Notably, this period covers Labor Day and BTS, causing the relative audience size to be smaller than non-holiday periods. To create a revenue estimate, it's therefore important to normalize audience size to demonstrate how I ran share in our data over a longer period of time. You can dynamically do this in our dashboard. The chart below shows audience share on Disney Plus for all of Q3. Now, as you can see, Hamilton is huge here. It's got like 44.13%, followed up by Frozen 2, and then Mulan comes in at third at 10.32%. And this is basically viewership percentage of all of Disney's US subscriber base. So Brian goes on to say, the data shows Mulan share during Q3 to date is just north of 10%, while Hamilton surpasses 40%, i.e. Hamilton's audience size is 4 times that of Mulan's. Note, this is remarkably consistent with the relative size of Hamilton versus Mulan on Google Trends, which is interesting. So like in the future, we could probably go on Google Trends and compare movies to see like how well they're doing versus other movies on different platforms. So we could go and look at The Mandalorian on Google Trends, and chances are it might be very similar to the viewership numbers on Disney Plus. Anyway, we can now apply this to Disney Plus's subbase in the US to arrive at a revenue estimate. An audience share of 10.32% times $30 per premium stream implies revenue as follows, depending on the size of the US installed user base. So we know that Disney has about 65 million subscribers to it, but that's worldwide. So what he's doing here is he's guesstimating how big the US audience portion is of that subscriber base, and then extrapolating it based off of the premium fee that you had to pay to see Mulan. So at a 20 million US subscriber base, Disney made $62 million off of Mulan. At 25 million, they made $77 million. And at 30 million subscriber base, they made $93 million. So the ceiling of how much Mulan made domestically off of their paid video on demand gambit is $93 million. And so this $93 million out of a $200 million movie that we already know has bombed in China, which Disney was really kind of banking on getting most of their money back from in terms of like the cost that it took to make Mulan. This is not good. There's at least $100 million shortfall on the cost of the budget alone, and then the marketing on top of that. I wouldn't be surprised if right now Mulan is suffering at least a $200 million to $150 million loss. So it looks like the experiment that Disney made in releasing Mulan directly to Disney Plus didn't quite pay off in the numbers they hoped for. But then again, are they going to do this internationally? Are they going to do this worldwide? So like if you live in the UK or Canada or Australia and you're a Disney Plus subscriber, are they going to charge you $30 to see Mulan as well? So out of their total 60 million, 65 million person subscriber base, how is that going to translate to profitability? And so I wouldn't be surprised if maybe they could squeak out another 50 million worldwide if they followed this model, but it's not clear that they're going to internationally, because I know that I think that they're looking at possibly distributing it into theaters internationally as well. But everything's so up in the air right now with COVID. A lot of theaters are locked down. I think even China, one of the reasons that the Chinese box office underperformed is simply because a lot of the theaters in China aren't really open, or the people aren't really going to the theaters because a lot of them are still on lockdown. Even though China might be playing down the fact that the coronavirus isn't as raging wild out there, their censorship bureau kind of keeps that news from going out. So I think that China's probably still under a great deal of lockdown, even though they told the world that they aren't. And that's one of the reasons why people just aren't going to the theaters right now. So it's kind of like a weird catch-22 situation for Disney, where they're kind of darned if they do and darned if they don't. But the important thing to remember here is that they actually took the risk, and Disney has the hard data. They're going to know whether or not this gamble paid off. And eventually we're going to find out once Disney does their next earnings call, which the Disney CEO, Bob Chapek, again, I'm terrible with pronouncing names, people. He's going to get on the call, and he's probably going to lay out exactly what Mulan's numbers were and how that's going to affect the company going forward. So I'll be very interested to see how this plays out. But I think these revised numbers from 7 Park Data themselves are actually probably a lot more accurate than what Yahoo Finance was speculating. It's certainly a big drop to go from 260 million to about 90 million. But again, that $93 million that is on the high end of what Mulan could have earned is pure profit for Disney. So there's a little bit of silver lining to that. But based on these numbers alone, I can't see them doing an exclusive, paid video on demand release to Disney Plus again with such a huge title, which is one of the reasons why I think they've actually pushed back Black Widow to 2021, simply because they know that, doing this again, it's going to have them take a hit, because Black Widow was another $200 million movie, So Disney is actually kind of between a rock and a hard place here. But it looks like their experiment with Mulan didn't quite pay off the way they were hoping for. But now they know. Now that going forward, there's no doubt in their minds what they can expect if they do a direct video release to, or direct AAA movie release to their streaming service. And this is good news for theaters, because it means that, studios are still going to want to put their movies in, theaters to go and see. But it's also interesting because now is the best time ever to be releasing stuff to streaming services, because everyone's stuck at home and people don't want to go to the theaters right now. So you got some pure data from some of the best time to be doing this type of thing, and it just didn't pay off for Disney. So what do you guys think of this? Do you think Disney's doomed? Do you think that the paid video on demand model is the wrong way to go, or should it be adjusted instead of maybe $30? What if it was $10? What if it was $20? That type of thing. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Please let me know what you think in the comments below. And if you want to take a few minutes to just go to saltynerdpodcast.com and subscribe to our podcast. We talk about movies, TV shows, pop culture, all types of fun, nerdy things. It takes you 2 seconds to sign up for our podcast. It's free. It's either on Apple Podcast or Google Podcast or Spotify. You can just search for us, the Salty Nerd Podcast, on any podcasting platform. And it does a lot to really support the show and support what we do, and we really appreciate it, guys. All right, this is Matthew Kadish, and I will catch you in the next video.